I was thinking as I was reading this and noticing, since we didn't have the choir singing this Sunday, somebody opened the gate and let them out and they didn't come back. But that's okay. You know, sometimes in our complex relations that we have with, particularly with Middle Eastern countries around the world, we are confronted with instances of barbaric forms of justice. We hear of people getting their hands cut off for stealing. We hear about women being stoned for adultery or even for driving a car. And we need to remind ourselves that Christian history has also been chock full of such kind of events by the Christian community. And we have even seen barbaric acts committed by our own soldiers in war against citizens in Korea, Vietnam, and Iraq. So we Christians should not be so quick to jump on people of other faiths for their barbaric acts. We don't need to be so righteous and pure. We need to recognize that human treatment of wrongdoers and applications of justice are reasonably modern developments, and the morality of rehabilitation and of kindness to one another is still evolving. You know, we still have not overcome the stigma of racial bias and segregation in this country. Many have even tried to defend segregation on the basis of Christian religion. And as you look back on segregation in your lifetime, is there any way that you can really defend that principle as a Christian principle? And you know, at one time, even in our history as a nation, this nation nearly acted out of revenge. It was the end of the Revolutionary War, and a number of colonists who were loyal to England stayed back behind in this country, and there was great hostility between those English loyalists and the American colonists. And a group of the loyalists one night raided a New Jersey town, and they burnt down the village. And after that was done, one of the loyalists slipped back into the town to visit his wife, and he was captured by the colonists, and he was then shot as he tried to escape. The loyalists convinced the military commander to hand over a colonist prisoner because they wanted to have a prisoner exchange. And so they promptly took their exchanged prisoner out and hung him for the murder of the man who had been shot. And the American people became outraged that that would happen. President Washington and the Congress were drawn into the battle, as the people demanded execution of one British prisoner to be drawn by lot to pay for the hanging of the American colonist who was innocent. Well, finally, cooler heads prevailed and the issue died down. But it did show that the issues of justice were difficult, and they are still very difficult to this day, even laying aside the whole issue of the problem of appeasing the populace. The principal issue, in this case issue, was that one man was to be sacrificed to satisfy the guilt of another. Not too unique in human history or world history. One man would be sacrificed for the guilt of another. There is another case in history when an innocent man willingly gave his life for the guilty. Jesus said, "I am the good shepherd. The good shepherd lays down his life for his sheep." The Lord of life willingly laid down his life for us all. And there are ample other stories in our history of people who have given their lives for others. There are some heartwarming stories of people that we can recount. A newspaper account in Murfreesboro, Tennessee, noted on May 28, 1989, that a former NFL football player, Jerry Anderson, died pulling two young boys out of a rain-swollen river. And it was about 40 miles southeast of Nashville, Tennessee. Witnesses said that Anderson saw the two boys walking along a dam that was overflowing, and they slipped into the river. And so he jumped in to save the boys. He got both of them safely on top of the dam, but then he went down 4 times and never came back up again. He gave his life to rescue 2 small boys. And then many years ago, I read a true story about a woman carrying a baby through the hills of South Wales, England. And she was confronted suddenly with a blizzard. And searchers found her body later on, frozen to death in the snow. And they noticed something rather odd. They noticed that she had no outer clothing or coats or anything on. And so they began searching, and they looked off to the side, and they found her baby. Her baby had been wrapped in all of her outer clothing in order to protect the baby. And the baby was still, in fact, alive. He grew up. He became David Lloyd George, who was the Prime Minister of Great Britain during World War I. No greater love than this, that a man lay down his life for his brother. And we applaud such bravery, such selfishness, such willingness to sacrifice for one another. But that's not what the passage from John's Gospel teaches us. Jesus says, "I am the good shepherd. The good shepherd lays down his life for his sheep." And I want to be clear on that point. And that is that what transpired on Calvary was not a transaction among equals. A man laid down his life, as he says, for some dumb sheep. And I hope you don't mind being called a dumb sheep. Maybe the sheep is really the one who ought to be insulted. After all, a sheep never killed his neighbor, passed on the latest tidbit of gossip, of juicy gossip, did not abuse its body, stole from its employers. You see, judged by their own standards, compared to us, sheep are pretty upright creatures. Still, I don't think any of us would lay down our life for dumb, smelly sheep. So this morning, I kind of want to focus on the absurdity of the idea of laying down your life for dumb sheep. The Lord of the universe laid down his life for you and for me, for all of us. He lay aside his regal robes to take up the cross of degradation and death. He laid aside his crown of glory for a painful crown, a crown of thorns. And yes, he did it for all of us. He did that for you and for me, for human beings who have had a history of infecting everything that we touch. We discover a way to harness the energy of the atom, and then we begin building bombs. We invent the internal combustion engine, and then we pollute the air. We discover ways to extract from nature cures for various ailments, and we end up producing addictive drugs. The Lord of life gave his life for creatures who do things like that. The absurdity of it all. We may not know why he would do it, but we do know the results of it all. Jesus said, "I am the good shepherd. The good shepherd lays his life down for his sheep." We may not think it's too cool to be thought of as sheep, but we can still be grateful that he made his sacrifice for us. And as I think about it, he doesn't really ask us to lay down our life for him. He doesn't ask us to lay down our life for anybody else. But I think maybe we should be the ones to make the sacrifice to him. The sacrifice to him out of thanks for all that we have received. And today is not too late to start. Maybe you can think of a way to give something of your life back to him. I believe with his grace, we can all figure out a way to offer thanks to him in a meaningful way, with meaningful sacrifices of our time, our talents, and our presence. We don't have to lay down our lives. Nobody's asking us to make that kind of a sacrifice. either to God or to her fellow man. But I have a hunch. I have a hunch. If God saw me making a sacrifice from the heart for you, or yes, even him, there would be a wonderful smile on his face, and he would say, that boy got the message. Amen. Before I announce the closing hymn, I want to remind those of you who are on the board and others who are interested in helping us resolve an issue about whether we should accept a mobile home trailer or not, that we'll have a short meeting after worship. And we will rise and sing on page 545 all verses of He Leadeth Me.